If you've ever wondered how to live a life of purpose, inner calm, and resilience, Stoicism might be the answer you've been looking for. In this video, we'll dive into 10 powerful exercises that you can start practicing today to transform your mindset and handle life's challenges with grace. Stick around till the end because these simple yet profound exercises could completely change the way you approach everyday life. Number 1. Controlling reactions to external events. One of the core ideas in Stoicism is that we don't control what happens around us, but we do control how we react to it. It sounds simple, right? Yet, in practice, it's a whole different story. Life throws curveballs, unexpected situations that we couldn't have predicted, people who rub us the wrong way, events that don't go as planned. And in those moments, it's super easy to let emotions spiral, to get swept up in frustration, anger, or anxiety. But what if you could pause before reacting? What if you could meet those moments with calm instead of chaos? That's where controlling your reactions comes in, and it's a powerful tool for navigating life. At its heart, controlling reactions isn't about suppressing what you feel or pretending that nothing bothers you. No one is suggesting you walk around like a robot, immune to the world. Instead, it's about recognizing that there's a space, however small, between what happens and how you respond. In that space lies your freedom. You get to decide, do I react instinctively, letting emotions run the show, or do I step back, take a breath, and respond thoughtfully? Now, this practice doesn't mean trying to change the external event itself. Because, let's be honest, most things in life are out of our hands. The weather, traffic, someone else's mood, none of that is up to you. The Stoics believe that external events are indifferent. In other words, they don't inherently carry positive or negative value, it's how we interpret them that gives them meaning. So, if you see something as bad, frustrating, or unfair, it's likely because you've labeled it that way. The same event could happen to someone else, and they might shrug it off like it's nothing. That's the power of perception. One way to start practicing control over your reactions is to get comfortable with the idea of acceptance. No, this doesn't mean giving up or being passive. It means acknowledging that things happen without your consent. The world doesn't bend to your will. When something unwanted or uncomfortable happens, instead of resisting it, you accept that it's there. Okay, this is happening. That's the first step. You're not jumping into frustration or judgment. You're simply seeing it for what it is, a thing that's occurring. You can't change that, but you can control what happens next. From there, it's about choosing your response. You might feel anger bubbling up or disappointment sinking in, and that's normal. The key is not to let those emotions dictate what you do. Pause for a moment. Check in with yourself. What story are you telling about this event? Is there a way to see it differently? Maybe it's not as catastrophic as it feels. Maybe there's something you can learn from it. Or maybe, just maybe, it's not worth your energy at all. Stoicism encourages you to focus on what you can control. And the truth is, your reactions are within your control, at least, with practice they can be. It's like building muscle. At first, you might catch yourself reacting automatically, falling into old habits of getting angry or upset. But over time, as you bring more awareness to that space between stimulus and response, you'll find you have more choices. You can choose to be calm. You can choose patience. You can choose not to let the external world dictate your internal peace. And when you start controlling your reactions, something interesting happens. You feel lighter. You realize that most things aren't worth getting worked up over. You stop sweating the small stuff, and even the big stuff starts to seem more manageable. Because you're no longer at the mercy of what happens around you. You've got your own compass, and you're steering the ship. That's the essence of Stoicism, meeting the world as it is, without letting it pull you off course. Number 2, voluntary discomfort. We've all heard that life begins at the edge of your comfort zone, right? But how often do we actually step out of it, intentionally, that is? In Stoicism, this practice isn't just some feel-good mantra to post on social media. It's a deliberate exercise that Stoics call voluntary discomfort. Sounds intense? Maybe. But it's more about training your mind than punishing your body. At its core, the idea is simple. By regularly choosing to experience small amounts of discomfort, you can better handle life's inevitable challenges. Think about it like this: life throws curveballs all the time. You can't avoid them, but you can get better at dodging or catching them if you've prepared. When you willingly put yourself in uncomfortable situations, you're kind of simulating those challenges in a controlled way. You build resilience, confidence, and, oddly enough, peace of mind. Here's how it works. Imagine choosing to do something a bit inconvenient or uncomfortable on purpose. Maybe it's skipping a meal when you're feeling a bit peckish. Or maybe it's going for a walk in the rain without your umbrella. These are small, manageable things that no one would recommend for fun, but when you embrace them, you're sending a signal to your mind: I can handle this. And once your mind starts believing that, it becomes easier to handle bigger discomforts when they inevitably pop up in life. What's fascinating about this practice is that it starts to reshape your relationship with discomfort. Instead of running away from the first sign of struggle, you start to see it differently. You realize that a little discomfort isn't the enemy, it's part of life. It's a training ground. Each time you voluntarily face discomfort, you strip away some of its power over you. It stops feeling so scary. This exercise also connects with one of Stoicism's central teachings: recognizing the difference between what you can and can't control. Most of the time, the discomfort we dread is linked to things outside of our control: circumstances, other people, or just the randomness of life. Voluntary discomfort lets you take control over one small part of that equation: your response. You can't always change the situation, but you can control how you react. By choosing to be uncomfortable, you're flexing that control muscle, strengthening it little by little. And here's the thing: don't think of it as a punishment or some grim test of willpower. It's more like a mental workout. Just like you might hit the gym to strengthen your body, this practice strengthens your mind. At first, yeah, it's going to feel odd, maybe even a bit pointless. But over time, you'll start to notice changes. You'll feel more adaptable, more able to roll with the punches. You'll find that things that used to bother you no longer hold the same power. When you get to the point where discomfort no longer makes you feel rattled, you've unlocked something valuable. It doesn't mean you won't feel uncomfortable, of course, you will, but your reaction changes. You learn to accept it, even embrace it, because you've experienced it before on your own terms. That familiarity is key. It's like shaking hands with an old foe. Suddenly, it's not so intimidating. So, while it might seem counterintuitive at first, seeking out discomfort voluntarily isn't about suffering, it's about building strength, awareness, and a deeper sense of peace. You're not just toughening up, you're developing the tools to face life's chaos with a sense of calm. And that's the magic of it. Number 3, Circles of Hierocles. The Circles of Hierocles. This exercise has such an interesting way of making us rethink our relationship with others. It's almost like a mental map, designed to expand your sense of connection, to remind you that you're not isolated but deeply intertwined with everyone and everything around you. And here's the thing: Hierocles, a Stoic philosopher, came up with this exercise centuries ago, yet it's still so incredibly relevant today. You can almost picture him drawing these circles in the sand or sketching them out on parchment, nudging us toward greater empathy, showing us how to stretch our sense of belonging. At the core, it's about seeing yourself in the center of these imaginary circles, surrounded first by your closest people, your immediate family, those you can reach out to right now. But here's where it gets really cool. As you move outward, Each circle grows a little wider, and within those expanding boundaries, you bring in more and more people. Your extended family, your neighbors, your community, your country, humanity as a whole. It's like zooming out on a map, but instead of distance, you're measuring your sense of connection. Now, think about what happens as you do this. You start with the people who naturally feel close to you. That part's easy, right? But then you get to the outer circles, the people you don't know as well or even at all. That's where the challenge kicks in. How do you treat people in those distant circles with the same kind of warmth, the same level of understanding, as you would your own family? Can you really feel that close to a stranger across the globe? It's a tall order, no doubt, but Hierocles believed you could at least try. And trying, in itself, is part of the exercise. The Stoics were big on this idea of universal brotherhood, and this exercise really taps into that. It nudges you to blur the lines between those circles. Instead of treating someone differently because they're far away in that metaphorical sense, you start to mentally pull them closer, breaking down those artificial barriers we tend to build. And it's not about forcing a sudden bond, but rather a gentle shifting of perspective. You can almost imagine the edges of each circle becoming less defined, like smudges on a page. Over time, as you practice this way of thinking, it's not like you're suddenly going to feel deep affection for every person on the planet. That would be overwhelming and, let's face it, a little unrealistic. But maybe you'll find yourself being just a bit more patient, a bit more understanding, especially with people you don't know or, more importantly, people you might not even like. You start seeing them as part of this larger, interconnected web of humanity, just like you. And once you see that, it's hard to unsee it. The circles keep expanding in your mind. What's also fascinating is how this exercise can shift the way you view yourself. When you're focused on others, your own problems, stresses, and day-to-day frustrations can seem a little smaller, a little more manageable. There's something calming about remembering that you're part of something larger, a vast human network that has been stretching across time and space. You start with your immediate circle, but as you move outward, it's like zooming out on your own life. Everything feels a bit less isolated, more connected. So, when you're feeling stuck in your own world, give this exercise a try. Imagine those circles, and see what happens when you bring people closer in your mind. It's a slow process, sure, but over time, you might find that it changes the way you relate to others and, ultimately, how you relate to yourself. Number 4, view challenges as opportunities for growth. Challenges. Ugh, right? No one really likes them. They're messy, uncomfortable, and often hit when we least expect it. But here's the thing, Stoicism flips the script on challenges. Instead of seeing them as roadblocks or burdens, Stoics view them as golden opportunities for growth. Sounds odd at first, doesn't it? But think about it. Without a little resistance, without something pushing back, how would we ever get stronger? How would we develop resilience, patience, or wisdom? In Stoicism, challenges are more than just things to get through, they're actually the raw material for becoming better. It's not like Stoics are out there chasing hardship for the fun of it. But when it comes their way, they embrace it as a chance to grow. And this mindset? It's a game changer. Imagine you're faced with something tough, something that makes your stomach drop or makes you want to crawl under a blanket and hide. The knee-jerk reaction is usually to avoid it, right? To wish it away or wait for it to pass. But Stoicism asks you to pause. Instead of ducking or wishing things were different, you flip the lens. You ask, how can this challenge serve me? What can I learn here? It's not about pretending the situation is great or that you're thrilled to be dealing with it. That's not the point. The point is, the very act of facing something difficult is what molds you into a stronger version of yourself. Now, seeing challenges as opportunities doesn't mean suddenly loving every struggle. but it's about recognizing that discomfort is often the first step to growth. Just like muscles grow by lifting weights, tension and effort, they need resistance. The same applies to life. When things are easy and smooth, we're coasting, not growing. But when something disrupts that flow, when we're faced with an obstacle, that's where the real work happens. It's in the challenge that you have the chance to sharpen your skills, your mindset, and your character. And it's not just about the big, dramatic challenges. Everyday stuff counts, too. Maybe it's a difficult conversation, a project that's taking way longer than expected, or something as simple as trying to stay calm when you're stuck in a never-ending line. These moments, small as they may seem, are opportunities. They're little chances to practice patience, adaptability, and grit. Stoicism invites you to embrace these moments, not as nuisances, but as tiny stepping stones toward becoming a better, more grounded version of yourself. Another thing Stoicism teaches is that challenges aren't obstacles in the way of life, they are life. They're not interruptions to the flow, they are the flow. That's a subtle but powerful shift in perspective. Instead of seeing a challenge as something getting in the way of your happiness, success, or peace, you start seeing it as the very thing fueling your growth. It's what's pushing you to evolve, to expand your limits. And that's where the magic is. Now, of course, none of this means challenges will suddenly feel easy or enjoyable. They're called challenges for a reason. But when you start to view them as opportunities for growth, something shifts internally. Instead of resisting, you engage. Instead of complaining, you get curious. What's this challenge asking of me? What strength can I cultivate here? Is it patience? Creativity? Emotional resilience? Every challenge asks something of you, and in answering, you grow. So next time something tough pops up, and you've got a choice. You can see it as a burden, something to suffer through, or you can take the Stoic approach and ask, how can this help me grow? That's the beauty of this mindset shift. Suddenly, challenges don't seem so daunting. They become opportunities. Opportunities to practice, to evolve, to become someone who is not just surviving life's hurdles, but thriving because of them. Number 5, Ikigai reflection. Let's dive into one of those exercises that tends to stir something deep within, Ikigai reflection. Now, Ikigai is a Japanese concept that's often translated as reason for being. It's this sweet spot where what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for all intersect. But when you weave that concept into Stoicism, it becomes less about finding a dream job or some ultimate life goal, and more about finding purpose in the everyday, in the here and now. It's not about waiting for some grand, elusive thing to appear and magically make your life meaningful. Instead, it's about uncovering the layers of meaning in what you're already doing. You see, in Stoicism, purpose isn't some fixed destination. It's not a single path that you discover one day and then follow forever without deviation. Purpose, to the Stoic mind, is about living in alignment with nature, embracing your role in the greater scheme of things, and cultivating virtue every single day. That's where the Ikigai reflection comes in. It's like hitting pause on the chaos and asking yourself some very honest questions. What am I really doing with my time? What brings me a sense of fulfillment? And am I living in a way that contributes positively to the world around me? When you start reflecting on your own Ikigai through the lens of Stoicism, you're not chasing some perfect alignment of passion, skill, and external reward. Instead, you're seeking clarity. You're looking at your actions, your thoughts, and your daily life and asking, does this make me better? Does it bring me closer to living a life that's in tune with my deeper values? Here's where things get a bit tricky. This reflection isn't about finding immediate answers or definitive conclusions. It's more like peeling back layers. Maybe today you realize, hey, I've been focusing way too much on things outside of my control. Or perhaps you notice that a lot of your energy is going into pursuits that don't really align with what matters to you. That's okay. In fact, that's part of the process. It's not about beating yourself up for past decisions or wasted time. Stoicism teaches us to approach life with compassion, towards others and towards ourselves. So, if your reflection reveals areas where you feel disconnected or off track, view that as an opportunity. It's a chance to recalibrate, to realign. What makes this practice so powerful is that it encourages ongoing self-awareness. You're not just reflecting once and then moving on. The Stoics believe that life is a constant practice of tuning your mind, examining your motivations, and adjusting your actions. Ikigai reflection asks you to do just that, but with a focus on finding where your purpose lies, right now, in this moment, with the tools and talents you already have. Another thing to remember, this isn't about external validation. Stoicism emphasizes the importance of inner virtues like wisdom, courage, and justice. Your Ikigai isn't dependent on recognition, applause, or rewards from the outside world. It's about that quiet sense of knowing you're living in a way that aligns with who you want to be. It's that feeling of satisfaction that comes from within, even if no one else notices what you're doing. The beauty of this reflection is that it doesn't ask you to drastically change your life overnight. It's not about quitting your job or moving to some exotic place to find yourself. It's about recognizing that purpose can be found in the ordinary moments, if you choose to see it. You can find meaning in a conversation, in a task well done, in helping someone without expecting anything in return. And when you start to connect those dots, those small, seemingly insignificant actions, you begin to realize that your purpose isn't out there somewhere waiting to be found. It's been here all along, woven into the fabric of your daily life. So, take some time to reflect. What are you doing that brings you a sense of peace, or fulfillment, or connection to something greater? What areas of your life could you tweak to align more with your values? Ikigai reflection isn't about nailing down the perfect answer, it's about staying curious and open, and letting your purpose unfold as you continue your Stoic journey. Number 6, focus on process, not outcome. Let's talk about one of the trickiest but most powerful concepts in Stoicism, focusing on the process, not the outcome. It's a complete mindset shift, one that can really flip how you look at success and failure. Now, we all love results, right? We're wired that way. There's a certain rush in hitting that goal, getting that reward, nailing that outcome. It feels good. It's satisfying. But here's the thing, Stoicism suggests we dial down the obsession with the end result and instead, zoom in on the process itself. And yeah, that's easier said than done, but stick with me. At its heart, this practice is about detaching from things you can't fully control. You can control your effort, your attitude, your actions, but you can't always control what happens after that. You might pour your heart into something, do everything right, but the outcome? That could still go sideways. And that's where frustration sneaks in. The Stoics would tell you to expect that. They'd remind you that the outcome is never fully in your hands, and the sooner you let go of trying to dictate it, the better you'll feel. So, how do you actually start focusing on the process? It's all about being in the present moment, paying attention to what you're doing right now. Let's say you're working on something challenging. Instead of constantly thinking, is this going to work? Will it pay off? What if it fails? Shift your attention to the steps you're taking at this very second. How are you approaching the task? Are you giving it your best shot? Are you learning something along the way? That's what matters. The Stoics knew that by focusing on the process, you're actually giving yourself more freedom. Why? Because you're no longer tied down by the weight of expectations. You're no longer at the mercy of things beyond your control, and that's liberating. The process becomes its own reward. You start to notice small wins along the way, The way you grow, the skills you sharpen, the calm you develop in sticking with something even when the results are uncertain. You shift from, did I succeed, to did I give it my best effort? Here's a fun part of all this. Paradoxically, when you let go of the outcome, you often end up performing better. Why? Because you're less stressed, less anxious about what might or might not happen. You're more focused on the here and now, which makes your work more deliberate, more thoughtful. You're not rushing to the finish line, you're fully engaged in each step along the way. You find flow. And when you're in that flow, the results often take care of themselves. That doesn't mean you don't care about results at all. Of course, you want good outcomes. But you approach them differently. You set your intention, you do what's within your power, and then, here's the hard part, you let go. You trust the process. The Stoics understood that worrying endlessly about results is not only unhelpful, it's exhausting. You'll burn yourself out chasing after things that aren't always yours to control. But if you focus on the process, you're always in control of that. This practice requires patience. It's not something that clicks overnight. We've all been conditioned to judge our efforts based on what we get in the end, whether it's a tangible reward or recognition. But when you switch gears and give your attention to the process itself, you start to realize that's where the real growth happens. The outcome is just the cherry on top. So next time you find yourself caught up in where you're going, take a breath and ask yourself, how can I be present in what I'm doing right now? Shift your focus, enjoy the journey, and let the results fall where they may. Number 7, remind yourself of the impermanence of things. Let's talk about one of those heavy, but oddly freeing ideas in Stoicism, impermanence. Yeah, that thing no one really wants to think about. The fact that everything, our moments, our stuff, our achievements, even the people around us, is temporary. Sounds a bit harsh, right? But wait. There's something liberating about it, too. When you really wrap your head around the idea that nothing lasts forever, life starts to feel different. Lighter, even. At first glance, the impermanence of things might seem depressing. Why bother with anything if it's all just going to fade away eventually? But that's where Stoicism flips the script. Instead of dwelling on the inevitable end, you use impermanence as a reminder to value what's here now. It's not about ignoring the fact that things change or disappear, but about seeing that very fact as a reason to be more present, more grateful, more engaged in the moment. Here's the thing, we tend to hold onto things tightly. We cling to routines, possessions, and relationships as if they're unshakable, permanent fixtures in our lives. But deep down, we know they aren't. Life is constantly shifting, whether we like it or not. Nothing stays exactly the same. And that's actually a good thing, even if it doesn't always feel like it. Stoicism encourages you to embrace that impermanence, not fight it. After all, change is the only real constant we have. So how does reminding yourself of impermanence help? Well, for one, it puts things into perspective. Those little irritations, the setbacks, even the bigger challenges, they don't seem quite so overwhelming when you realize they're temporary. That bad day? It'll pass. The argument you had? It'll fade. When you remind yourself that nothing lasts forever, you start to see how fleeting most of our daily concerns really are. It gives you permission to stop sweating the small stuff. But it goes deeper than that. Impermanence also serves as a wake-up call to appreciate what's in front of you, right now. When you recognize that everything you experience is transient, you start to see the beauty in it. That morning coffee you have every day. One day, it'll be your last cup. Not to sound grim, but it makes you savor it a bit more, doesn't it? You start to appreciate the little things, knowing they won't always be there. It's about finding joy and meaning in the present, because the present is really all you've got. Of course, the same goes for the people in your life. When you remind yourself of their impermanence, how they, too, are here for only a finite time, it encourages you to be more mindful of your interactions. You start to let go of petty frustrations, realizing they're not worth the limited time you have with someone. Instead, you focus on the connection, the moments of kindness, the shared experiences. Stoicism teaches us that impermanence isn't something to fear. It's something to accept and, more importantly, to use. By recognizing that everything around us is in a constant state of change, we can live more fully. We can appreciate what's good, let go of what's bad, and stop getting so attached to things that, in the grand scheme of things, are just passing through. So, next time you find yourself caught up in the rush of life, take a moment. Remind yourself that this too, whatever it is, won't last. And that's okay. In fact, it's more than okay, it's what makes life rich and meaningful. Everything is in motion, always. And the more we can embrace that, the more we can find peace in the present and appreciate the ride while it lasts. Number 8. Walking meditation. Walking and meditation? It might sound like a contradiction at first. Isn't meditation all about sitting still and clearing your mind? Not in Stoicism. Here, it's not just about retreating from the world to find peace, but learning how to engage with it mindfully, even while in motion. Walking meditation is one of the most accessible ways to blend action with introspection, and it's a perfect Stoic exercise to cultivate awareness, focus, and inner calm without needing to lock yourself away in a quiet room. So, what exactly is walking meditation? It's simple, yet surprisingly profound. Imagine yourself moving through the world, but instead of walking automatically, you become acutely aware of each step, each breath, and each sensation. Every time your foot hits the ground, it becomes an anchor to the present moment. You're no longer rushing from point A to point B. Instead, you're walking with intention, fully aware of your surroundings but detached from distractions. It's like hitting pause on the constant stream of thoughts that usually dominates your mind. Now, here's the thing, when you start practicing walking meditation, don't expect your thoughts to magically disappear. They won't. And that's okay. In fact, Stoicism doesn't ask you to empty your mind. Instead, it encourages you to observe your thoughts, like clouds passing across the sky. They're there, but you don't have to chase them or get caught up in them. Walking meditation gives you the space to witness them without being swept away by them. As you walk, notice the sensation of your feet pressing into the earth. Feel the breeze against your skin. Pay attention to the rhythm of your breath. These might sound like small things, but in Stoicism, the small things matter. Every moment is an opportunity to practice awareness and presence. The simple act of walking, something you do every day without thinking, becomes a powerful tool for cultivating mindfulness and grounding yourself in the present. There's a kind of magic that happens when you do this. Suddenly, your mind stops racing ahead to the future or getting stuck in the past. You're here, now. Each step becomes a reminder of the Stoic principle to live in the moment and not be ruled by worries or regrets. That doesn't mean ignoring the future or dismissing the past entirely. It's more about understanding that the only moment you truly have is the one you're in. And here's the beauty of walking meditation, you can do it anywhere. Whether you're in a quiet park or a bustling city street, it doesn't matter. The practice is internal. Sure, there might be distractions, cars honking, people chatting, maybe a loud dog barking, but Stoicism teaches us not to be derailed by what's outside our control. Those distractions? Let them be. Acknowledge them, and then return to your steps. It's this continuous practice of refocusing that strengthens your mental resilience. One of the coolest things about walking meditation is how it connects you to the world around you. In Stoicism, we talk a lot about being part of the greater whole, seeing yourself as a single thread in the fabric of the universe. When you walk mindfully, you start to feel that connection more deeply. You're not just moving through the world, you're part of it. You're aware of the ground beneath you, the air you're breathing, the life unfolding all around you. It's a humbling and expansive feeling, this sense that you're both small and significant at the same time. And don't get caught up in trying to do it perfectly. Walking meditation, like all Stoic practices, isn't about mastering some rigid technique. It's about showing up and being present with whatever comes up. Some days, you might feel completely in tune with your surroundings, and other days, your mind might wander constantly. That's fine. It's the practice itself that matters, the effort to be present, the intention to engage with life mindfully. So, the next time you head out for a walk, whether it's for 5 minutes or an hour, give this a try. Slow down. Breathe deeply. Feel your steps. Notice the world around you without judgment, without rushing to get anywhere. Just walk. And in that walking, you'll find a quiet space within yourself, a space that Stoicism encourages you to cultivate, a space where you can practice the art of living, one step at a time. Number 9. Break down big tasks into small steps. Alright, so let's dive into one of the simplest yet most effective Stoic exercises, breaking down big tasks into smaller, more manageable steps. It sounds almost too easy, right? But, trust me, there's a reason this is such a cornerstone in Stoic thinking. The idea is to avoid that overwhelming feeling when you're staring at something huge and intimidating, the kind of task that makes you want to crawl under a blanket and pretend it doesn't exist. We've all been there, seeing that mountain of work and thinking, how am I ever going to get through this? That's where this technique comes in. It's about taking that mountain and chipping away at it, bit by bit. So, imagine you've got this giant task looming over you. Maybe it feels like a monster, like something that's going to swallow up all your time and energy. It's easy to get paralyzed by the sheer size of it. Your mind starts racing ahead, thinking about how long it's going to take, all the potential roadblocks, everything that could go wrong. Suddenly, it's not just the task itself that's stressful, it's all the thoughts swirling around it. The Stoics would say, whoa, slow down. Focus on what's in front of you, right now. The key here is to zoom in, narrow your focus. Instead of thinking about the entire task in one big, scary chunk, break it down into smaller, more manageable pieces. Tiny steps, even. That monster of a project? It's just a collection of smaller tasks strung together. And when you start looking at it that way, it stops being quite so overwhelming. You're not trying to tackle the whole thing at once, you're just handling one small piece at a time. It's like chopping up a giant puzzle. You're focusing on one piece, and then the next, and slowly but surely, it starts to come together. But here's the catch, it's not just about breaking things down for the sake of feeling less overwhelmed. The Stoics want you to actually focus on each step as its own little victory. Each small action is something you can control. You can't control how long the entire project will take, but you can control what you do today, in this moment. That's the Stoic mindset, control what's within your grasp, and don't get lost worrying about the rest. What's interesting about this approach is that it's not just about productivity. Sure, breaking things down helps you get things done, but there's something deeper here. By focusing on these smaller steps, you're training your mind to stay present, to be mindful of what you're doing right now rather than getting caught up in future anxieties. You stop stressing about how far away the finish line is and instead appreciate the progress you're making in each moment. And let's not forget, tackling things this way also gives you momentum. Once you complete one small step, there's a kind of psychological boost, this feeling of, hey, I did that. I can do the next one too. Each little win propels you forward. Before you know it, you're chipping away at the bigger task without even realizing it. It becomes less about conquering the whole mountain and more about enjoying the climb, one step at a time. Now, I know this might seem overly simple at first glance. But that's the beauty of it, it is simple, and that's what makes it work. The Stoics weren't about overcomplicating things. They understood that big, daunting tasks are just a series of small, manageable actions. When you focus on those actions, the task stops being a source of dread and starts becoming something you can actually engage with. One small step, then another, and another. So next time you're staring down something massive, don't get caught up in the size of it. Break it down. Focus on one small piece. And trust that by doing so, you'll eventually get where you need to go, one manageable step at a time. Number 10, mindful eating. Let's face it, eating is something we often rush through without a second thought. We grab a bite, scroll through our phones, and before we know it, the meal's over and we're already thinking about the next thing. But Stoicism has a little gem tucked away when it comes to something as everyday as eating, mindfulness. You've probably heard of mindful eating before, but how does it fit into Stoicism, and what does it really mean to eat mindfully? First off, mindful eating in the Stoic sense isn't some complicated practice. It's not about following strict rules or turning your meal into a big, ritualistic event. It's more about bringing your attention back to the simple act of eating, something that we often do on autopilot. Stoicism is all about awareness and intention, and that applies to everything, even the way you consume food. When you sit down to eat, the idea is to really be there, fully present with your food, not distracted or zoned out. It's a way to practice being in the moment, which is a cornerstone of Stoic philosophy. Now, what does that look like? Well, it starts with noticing. Noticing the food on your plate, the colors, the smells, the textures. We tend to just dive in without paying attention, but what if you paused for a second? What if you took the time to actually appreciate the food in front of you, not in a dramatic or exaggerated way, but just a moment of recognition? You're not just shoveling something into your mouth, you're engaging with it. This food is fueling your body, it's part of your day, your life. Stoicism invites you to respect that process, even if it's something as simple as a piece of bread. And here's the thing, mindful eating can also be a practice of restraint, another key Stoic principle. It's about knowing when enough is enough. Stoicism isn't about denying yourself pleasure, but it does ask you to be mindful of excess. Eating just to eat, without really paying attention, often leads to overindulgence. We eat out of boredom, stress, or habit, rather than out of genuine hunger or need. A Stoic approach would encourage you to tune into your body, to eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full, no mindless snacking, no overeating just because the food is there. It's about moderation, balance, and being intentional with what and how much you consume. But there's more to it than just what's on the plate. Mindful eating also involves gratitude. Stoics believed in appreciating what's in front of you without taking it for granted. When you eat mindfully, you're not just fueling your body, you're acknowledging the effort, the resources, and the time that went into providing that meal. It's about feeling a quiet sense of thanks, not in a showy or performative way, but just a simple, internal recognition. You realize that the food you're eating didn't appear out of thin air. You appreciate its presence in your life. Finally, mindful eating can be a practice in self-control. You're not just mindlessly reaching for more. Instead, you're practicing restraint, savoring each bite, and recognizing when it's time to stop. And when you eat mindfully, you're more likely to choose foods that nourish and sustain you rather than those that simply fill a void. You make decisions based on what your body needs, not on impulse or craving. So, next time you sit down for a meal, challenge yourself to slow down. Take a breath, notice the food in front of you, and eat with intention. It's a small but powerful way to incorporate Stoicism into your daily life, a practice that not only benefits your body but sharpens your mind. After all, in a world that's constantly pulling us in different directions, bringing mindfulness to something as basic as eating can ground you in the present and remind you of the simple things that matter. Thanks so much for watching. I hope these 10 Stoic exercises gave you some practical tools to start your journey into Stoicism. Remember, it's all about progress, not perfection. If you found value in this video, make sure to hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more content on philosophy, self-improvement, and living a better life. Also, drop a comment below. What's your favorite Stoic practice, or which one are you excited to try? I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, stay grounded, stay focused, and keep practicing Stoicism. See you in the next video.